I'm taking my son, and there's nothing you can do to stop me." Victoria's words hit like a slap across the face. Noelle watched Daniel's expression shift, watched him grip the baby tighter against his chest, watched 3 weeks of hope crumble in a single sentence. His voice came out rough. "You abandoned him." "I had a mental health crisis. The courts will understand." Victoria's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. "But will they understand why you've been living with another woman while my son was in foster care?" Noelle's stomach dropped. But that's not where this story begins. It begins with a basket, a doorstep, and 6 words that changed everything. 11:47 p.m. Christmas Eve. Charleston, South Carolina. Noelle Carter's foot caught the basket before she saw it. She'd been fumbling for her keys, exhausted from a 14-hour shift at the hospital, thinking about nothing but the cold sandwich waiting in her refrigerator. The cry that followed made her drop to her knees. A baby. Tiny fists punching at the December air. Face scrunched in that particular newborn fury that said, "I'm hungry and cold, and where is everyone who was supposed to take care of me?" The blanket was cashmere. The basket was hand-woven, expensive. The kind of thing you'd find in a boutique on King Street, not abandoned on a porch. The note was 6 words. "His father doesn't know. Please." Noelle's hands trembled as she lifted the baby. Then she saw the hospital bracelet tucked in the corner. Baby Boy Cross. Cross. As in the Cross family. As in the real estate empire that owned half the historic district. As in Daniel Cross, the billionaire who'd lost his wife 3 years ago and hadn't been seen smiling since. "No," Noelle whispered, "this cannot be happening." Family, welcome back. If you're new, hit subscribe and the notification bell right now. Let's continue. Noelle brought the baby inside, her hands shaking as she cradled him against her chest. The house was cold. She kept the thermostat low to save money. But she grabbed blankets from the closet and wrapped him until he looked like a tiny burrito of fleece and cashmere. "It's okay," she murmured. "You're safe now. I've got you." He blinked up at her with dark eyes that seemed too knowing for someone so small. 2 weeks old, maybe. Healthy, from what she could tell. But abandoned. Left on a stranger's porch like a package someone forgot to claim. The anger surprised her. Not at the baby, never at the baby, but at whoever had left him here. At the desperation that must have driven someone to walk away from something so precious. She picked up her phone and dialed 911. The dispatcher was kind but overwhelmed. "A social worker will come by in the morning, ma'am. Can you keep the baby overnight?" Morning meaning when? After the holiday. We're doing our best. Noelle hung up and looked at the baby in her arms. He'd stopped crying, those tiny eyes blinking up at her like she was the most fascinating thing he'd ever seen. "Well," she said softly, "looks like it's just you and me tonight, little one." She was 34 years old, single, and running on fumes. Her mother's Alzheimer's care cost more than she made in a month. Her student loans were a weight she'd stopped calculating. The house she'd inherited from her grandmother needed repairs she couldn't afford. She did not need a baby on her doorstep on Christmas Eve. But here he was. The knock came at 2:34 a.m. Sharp, urgent, the kind of knock that said, "I'm not leaving until you open this door." Noelle checked the peephole. A man in a wool coat that probably cost more than her car. Dark hair disheveled, eyes wild with something between terror and hope. She kept the chain on when she opened the door. "Where's my son?" His voice was raw, scraped. "Please, I've been to 6 houses tonight." "Who are you?" "Daniel Cross." He said it like it should explain everything. The hospital called. Someone took my baby from the NICU. His mother. She just vanished with him. His mother left him here, on my doorstep, with a note.
Daniel's face crumpled. Not collapsed, crumpled. Like a building that had been standing through sheer force of will finally giving in. "Can I see him, please?" His voice cracked on the word. "I didn't even know he existed until 3 days ago." From inside the house, the baby started crying. Daniel's whole body sagged with relief. "That's him. That's my son." Noelle studied him through the gap in the door. The desperation, the fear, the way his hands shook against the doorframe. She unhooked the chain. "Tell me everything," she said, handing him coffee at 4 a.m.
Daniel sat on her worn couch, holding the baby like he was terrified he'd break something precious. The contrast was stark. His expensive clothes against her thrift store cushions, his polished shoes on her scuffed floors. But he didn't seem to notice. His entire focus was on the tiny face in his arms. "It was one night," he said quietly, "after a charity gala. I was drunk, grieving. My wife died 3 years ago. Christmas Eve, actually."
"I'm sorry." Everyone says that. He wasn't being cruel, just honest. After a while, the words stop meaning anything. You just nod and move on. What was her name? He looked up, surprised. Most people avoided the question. Grace. That's beautiful. She was beautiful. Smart. Kind. The kind of person who made everyone around her better just by existing. He looked back at the baby. We tried for years to have children. Fertility treatments, specialists, everything. Never worked. And then she got sick and he trailed off. Noelle didn't push. Victoria was at the gala, he continued eventually. Beautiful, willing, and I was... He shook his head. It doesn't matter what I was. It was a mistake. We both knew it. I never saw her again. Until
3 days ago, she showed up at my office, 8 months pregnant. Said she'd been trying to decide what to do, and she couldn't handle it anymore. The baby was mine, and she wanted me to take him. Just like that. Just like that. He looked down at the tiny face. She went into labor that night. Emergency C-section. He was premature. Had to stay in the NICU. I've been at that hospital every single day, watching him through the glass, counting his breaths. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. And tonight, she just took him and disappeared. Why would she leave him here? I don't know. I don't understand any of it. He met her eyes. I just know I can't lose him.
The police arrived, made calls, confirmed everything. "Mr. Cross, you can't take the baby tonight." Daniel's head snapped up. "What?" "CPS protocol, abandoned infant case. There has to be an investigation before." "He's my son." "We understand that, sir, but protocol." "He can stay here." Everyone turned to look at Noelle. "I'm a pediatric nurse," she continued, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. "My foster certification is still active. He can stay with me during the investigation." Daniel stared at her. "You would do that? For us?" "I've seen fathers who don't care, who show up at the hospital and barely look at their children, who ask how soon they can leave." She held his gaze. "You're not one of them."
5 a.m. The police were gone. The baby was sleeping. Daniel stood in her living room, making no move to leave. "I can't go," he said. "I know I should let you sleep, but I just found him, and I can't." "The guest room is down the hall." The words came out before she could stop them. "Towels in the closet." "Why are you helping me?" "Because it's Christmas. Because he's a baby. Because—" She paused, searching for the right words. "Because I know what it's like to fight for family when the whole world seems designed to tear you apart." Something shifted in his expression. Something warm. "Thank you, Noelle." It was the first time he'd used her name. It shouldn't have mattered. It did.
3 days later, they had a routine. Daniel learned to change diapers with military precision, measuring, folding, adjusting until every edge was perfect. He approached it like a business problem that needed solving, and Noelle couldn't help but smile watching him concentrate. "You're overthinking it," she said on the second day as he frowned at a particularly rebellious diaper tab. "I want to get it right. It's a diaper, not a contract negotiation. Everything matters when it comes to him." Something in his voice made her pause. The intensity. The devotion. This wasn't a man going through the motions. This was a man who'd found something worth fighting for. Noelle taught him the art of the 3 a.m. bottle, the specific angle that prevented air bubbles, the gentle burping rhythm, the soft humming that made the baby's eyes flutter closed. She found herself singing the same lullabies her mother used to sing before the Alzheimer's stole the memories away. They passed each other in hallways, both exhausted, both somehow more alive than they'd been in years. Their fingers would brush when reaching for the same bottle. Their eyes would meet over the baby's head and hold a beat too long. One night, they both fell asleep on opposite ends of the couch with James between them. Noelle woke at dawn to find Daniel's hand had somehow found hers in the darkness. Neither of them talked about what was happening. Neither of them had to. "You named him," Noelle said on the 4th morning, watching Daniel rock the baby by the window. "James, after my father." He paused, something vulnerable crossing his face. "James Joy Cross." "Joy?" His eyes found hers across the room. "After someone who showed me kindness when I needed it most." Heat crept up her cheeks. "Daniel, you didn't have to."
"I wanted to." He held her gaze. Some things deserve to be remembered. The moment stretched between them, charged, full of something neither of them was ready to name. James started fussing, breaking the spell. Noelle turned away, her heart pounding. "I should make breakfast." "Coward," Daniel said softly. She didn't deny it. The social worker came on December 26th. Patricia Mendez was in her late 50s, with silver-streaked hair and eyes that missed nothing. She'd been doing this job for over 20 years, she told them as she walked through the door. Had started right out of college thinking she could save the world. Now she just tried to save one child at a time.
She walked through every room with her clipboard, making notes that Noelle couldn't see, checked the temperature of the water heater, inspected the locks on the cabinets, asked questions that felt more like surgical instruments than conversation. "How many hours do you work per week, Miss Carter?" "Usually 40, sometimes more when we're short-staffed." "And who would care for the baby during those hours?" "Mr. Cross has been here full-time. We've discussed hiring a licensed caregiver for additional support once the investigation is complete." "I see." More notes. "And your relationship with Mr. Cross, how would you characterize it?" The question hung in the air. Noelle felt Daniel's eyes on her from across the room, where he was demonstrating his bottle warming technique. "Professional," she said. Patricia looked up, her gaze sharp. "The baby seems healthy, well-fed, clean. Mr. Cross appears to be bonding appropriately.
You've done a commendable job under difficult circumstances.
Thank you. But I do have concerns. Patricia set down her clipboard. This arrangement is unusual, Miss Carter. A biological father staying full-time in the foster home during an active investigation. Some might call it a conflict of interest. Some might call it a father fighting to be with his son. Yes, Patricia's expression softened slightly. They might. But my job is to ensure the child's welfare, not to facilitate reunification at any cost. You understand the distinction? I do. Good. She picked up her clipboard again. 5 more days. If everything checks out, if there are no complications with the mother's whereabouts or intentions, he'll be cleared for custody. If something raises concerns, she didn't finish. She didn't need to. After Patricia left, Daniel appeared in the kitchen doorway. You're getting attached, he said. It wasn't a question. She said the same thing. Is she right? Noelle looked at him, at the baby in his arms, at the life that had invaded her quiet existence and turned it upside down.
Probably, she admitted. Is that a problem? Only if you want it to be. She didn't answer, but she didn't look away either. That night, Noelle found Daniel on the back porch. The December air was cold enough to see her breath, but he didn't seem to notice. He was staring at the sky like it held answers he desperately needed, his shoulders hunched against more than just the chill. Mind if I sit? He shifted to make room. Their shoulders were inches apart, almost touching. Not quite. You should be sleeping, he said. So should you. James is down for at least 2 hours. I know, I just needed to think. The silence stretched between them, comfortable in a way that surprised her. She'd known him less than a week, but somehow sitting in silence with him felt more natural than talking to people she'd known for years.
"Tell me about your wife," she said finally. He didn't answer immediately. She'd almost decided she'd pushed too far when he spoke. Grace. The name came out soft, tender, like something precious he was afraid of breaking. We met in college. She was studying art history. I was business. We had nothing in common on paper, but somehow we made sense together. How long were you married? 12 years. We got married at 25, against both our families' wishes. Too young, they said. Too different. They were wrong about everything, except one thing. We never could have children. Is that when you started fertility treatments? Grace wanted them more than anything. She would have done anything to be a mother, and I would have done anything to make her happy. His voice roughened. We were so focused on what we didn't have that we stopped noticing what we did. And then she got sick. Cancer.
Ovarian. Stage 3B by the time they caught it. We'd been so obsessed with fertility treatments that we ignored every symptom. The fatigue, the bloating, the pain she kept dismissing as side effects. His hands clenched. If we'd been paying attention. You can't think like that. Can't I? He finally looked at her. His eyes were bright in the darkness. She died on Christmas Eve, 3 years ago tonight. I held her hand while she stopped breathing, and she made me promise. He trailed off. Promise what? That I'd keep living, that I'd find happiness again. A bitter laugh. I've been a ghost ever since, working, drinking, trying to outrun the grief, breaking that promise every single day. Noelle reached over, took his hand. His fingers were cold. She wrapped hers around them anyway. And then James appeared, she said softly. Born 3 years to the day after she died. You think she sent him?
I think love doesn't end just because someone's gone. I think the people we lose find ways to keep looking out for us, even when we can't see them anymore. He turned his hand over, laced his fingers through hers. My mother used to say things like that, Noelle continued, before the Alzheimer's took her memories. She'd say, the people we love leave fingerprints on our hearts, and nothing can ever erase them. She sounds wise. She was.
She still is, on her good days. Her voice caught. The hardest part isn't the forgetting. It's the moments when she remembers, when she looks at me and really sees me and asks why I put her in that place. Why did you? Because I couldn't keep her safe anymore. She'd wander, get confused, try to cook and nearly burn down the kitchen. I couldn't work enough hours to pay for her care and be there to watch her every second. The tears came, unexpected and unstoppable. So I put her somewhere with locked doors and professional staff, and I tell myself it was the right choice. But some days
you're not sure. Some days I'm not sure about anything. They sat in silence, hands intertwined, while the city slept around them. The cold air turned their breath into white clouds that disappeared into the darkness. There's something I need to tell you. December 28th. Daniel was feeding James in the living room. Noelle stood in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself like armor. My mother has Alzheimer's. She's in a facility on James Island. That's why I work double shifts. That's why this house is falling apart around me. She swallowed hard. And I can't have children. My ex-husband laughed when he found out, said he wanted a real family. Daniel set down the bottle. Noelle.
I'm telling you, because these past few days, taking care of James, her voice cracked, it's the closest I'll ever come to being a mother. And when this is over, when you take him home, I need to walk away, completely. Because if I don't, if I stay attached, it will destroy me. He stood, crossed the room, stopped close enough that she could feel his warmth, close enough that she had to tilt her head up to meet his eyes. What if you didn't have to walk away? What? What if you stayed? Not as a foster parent, not as a nurse doing a job. He reached up, brushed a strand of hair from her face. His fingers trembled. What if you stayed as something else? Daniel, we've known each other a week.
I know it's fast. I know it's complicated. His thumb traced her cheekbone. But I haven't felt this alive in 3 years. And every single time I imagine the future now, you're in it. She should step back, should be sensible, should remember all the reasons this was a terrible idea. Instead, she said, "Your grandmother is coming tomorrow. I should clean the house." He smiled, just a little. Coward. You keep saying that. You keep proving it. She stepped back anyway, but she was smiling too. Eleanor Cross arrived like a force of nature in Chanel, 82 years old, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who had survived wars and depressions and the particular cruelty of Charleston society with her spine intact. She took one look at her great-grandson and burst into tears.
"He has your eyes," she said to Daniel, cradling James like he was made of glass, "and your grandfather's chin. Oh, he's beautiful." Then she turned to Noelle. "So, you're the nurse who opened her door to strangers on Christmas Eve." "Yes, ma'am."
My grandson says you're remarkable. Eleanor's gaze was penetrating. He says you're the reason he can smile again. Heat flooded Noelle's cheeks. He's been sleep-deprived. He says a lot of things. Eleanor's laugh was unexpected, warm, real. Oh, I like you. She grasped Noelle's hand with surprising strength. Thank you for giving my family a second chance when we didn't deserve one. New Year's Eve. Not midnight. Not champagne. Not fireworks or countdowns or crowds of strangers. 3 p.m. Kitchen. Soap suds and baby bottles, and the ordinary magic of 2 people sharing space. You have soap on your cheek, Daniel said. Where?
He reached over to show her. His thumb brushed her cheekbone, gentle, warm. And then his hand stayed there, cupping her face, his eyes asking a question she didn't have words to answer. The kiss was soft, tentative, a question more than a statement. She felt it everywhere, the warmth of his mouth, the gentle pressure of his fingers in her hair, the way her whole body seemed to lean toward him like a plant toward sunlight. Noelle pulled back first. "We can't," she whispered. "I know. The investigation, Patricia, if they think this is some kind of arrangement." "I know." He stepped back. His hand fell away. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have." "Don't." She grabbed his hand before he could retreat further. "Don't apologize for that. Just not yet. Not while everything is so uncertain."
He nodded slowly. "Not yet, but soon. Maybe, if everything works out. If you still feel this way when the investigation is over." "I'll still feel this way," he said quietly. "I'll feel this way when we're 80. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the kiss, over and over. The softness of it, the promise in it, the way it had felt like coming home after years of wandering. A knock on her door, soft, hesitant. "Come in." Daniel stood in the doorway, James asleep in his arms. He wouldn't settle. He said, "I think he knows you're not in the room." She sat up, made room on the bed. "Bring him here." He sat beside her, James between them, the moonlight painting silver stripes across the quilt.
"I have feelings for you," Daniel said quietly. "I know the timing is terrible. I know the circumstances are impossible. But I need you to know, this isn't gratitude. This isn't proximity or convenience or any of the logical explanations." "Daniel?" "I look at you and I see someone real. Someone who tells the truth even when it's hard. Someone who works herself to exhaustion for people she loves and never asks for anything in return." He met her eyes in the darkness. "Someone who makes me want to be better than I've been." "We've known each other 10 days. "I know, and I'm not asking for anything tonight. I'm just telling you what's true." He reached over, touched her hand. "I'm falling in love with you, Noelle. I thought you should know." She didn't answer. Not with words. She laced her fingers through his, and they sat there in the darkness, the baby between them, while the old year died and the new one was born.
January 2nd. The knock on the door came at 10 a.m. Noelle expected Patricia for the final evaluation. Victoria Shaw walked through the door instead. She was beautiful in the way expensive things are beautiful. Polished, maintained, designed to impress. Designer clothes that probably cost more than Noelle's monthly rent. Perfect makeup that couldn't quite hide the shadows under her eyes. A smile that was all teeth and no warmth. Behind her stood Patricia, looking uncomfortable. "She turned herself in this morning," Patricia explained. "She's completed a treatment program for postpartum psychosis. She has a legal right to be part of this conversation." Daniel went rigid beside Noelle. His hand found hers, gripped tight. "Hello, Daniel." Victoria's voice was smooth as silk. "You look well. Single fatherhood agrees with you. What do you want, Victoria?"
"I made a mistake leaving James here." She moved further into the room, her eyes scanning everything. The modest furniture, the worn carpets, the woman standing too close to the man she'd shared a bed with. "I was confused, postpartum, not thinking clearly, but I've received treatment.
And I've realized I want to be part of my son's life. You abandoned him, left him on a stranger's doorstep in December, with a note that didn't even explain. I had a mental health crisis. My doctors will testify that I was suffering from severe postpartum psychosis. The courts are very understanding about such things these days. She tilted her head. Mothers who struggle with mental health deserve compassion, don't they? What exactly are you asking for? Joint custody. 50-50. With appropriate financial support, of course. A child of a cross-heir deserves certain standards of living. And if I refuse...
Victoria's smile sharpened into something dangerous. Then I go to the press. I tell them how the grieving billionaire tried to steal my baby while I was suffering a mental health crisis. I mention that you've been living with another woman. Her gaze slid to Noelle, cold and calculating, while my son was technically in foster care. I paint a picture of a man so desperate for an heir that he was willing to take advantage of a sick woman. She stepped closer to Daniel, her voice dropping to something almost intimate. The narrative writes itself, Daniel. Wealthy, powerful man, vulnerable, abandoned mother, a baby caught in the middle. Which version do you think the public will believe? The silence that followed was heavy enough to choke on. Get out, Daniel said finally. I'll see you in court. Victoria collected her designer bag from where she'd set it down. My lawyers will be in touch. Try not to do anything stupid between now and then. These things are so much easier when everyone cooperates. She walked out without looking back.
After Victoria left, Daniel disappeared into the guest room. Noelle gave him an hour. Then she knocked. Go away. No. She opened the door. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, head in his hands. He looked like a man who'd been running a marathon and just realized the finish line had moved. She's going to take him from me. Maybe. Noelle sat beside him, close enough to touch. Maybe not. She'll spin it. Mental health crisis. Desperate mother. The courts love that story. Then change the narrative. She took his hand. Fight, Daniel. Get the best lawyers. Gather evidence. Show the court who you really are. Who I really am is a man who didn't know his son existed until 3 weeks ago. Who you really are is a man who drove to 6 houses in the middle of the night looking for that son, who learned to change diapers and make formula and sing terrible lullabies at 3 a.m., who loves that baby more than his own life. She squeezed his hand. That's who you are. That's what the court needs to see. He looked at her for a long moment. How do you do that? Do what? Make me believe I'm not a failure. Because you're not. You're a good man in an impossible situation, and you're fighting with everything you have. She leaned closer. That's not failure. That's love. I can't lose him, Noelle. Then don't. Fight for him. Whatever it takes. She paused. I'll help you. Why? The question hung between them.
Because James deserves a father who shows up. She met his eyes. And because somewhere in the middle of all this chaos, I fell in love with you too. His breath caught. Noelle? You don't have to say anything. I just thought you should know. The custody hearing was January 15th, Charleston County Family Court, Room 3B. A judge named Margaret Chen, who was known for being scrupulously fair and impossible to read. Noelle sat in the gallery with James in her arms, watching the battle unfold like theater.
Daniel at the plaintiff's table with his expensive lawyers, Victoria at the defendant's table with lawyers just as expensive, probably funded by whatever she'd negotiated. Victoria's lawyers painted her as a victim, postpartum crisis, mental health struggle, a mother desperate to reunite with the child she loved. They presented doctor's notes, treatment records, testimonials from the facility where she'd completed her program. A narrative of a woman brought low by biology and circumstance, now recovered and ready to be the mother her son deserved.
Miss Shaw experienced a severe dissociative episode triggered by postpartum psychosis, her doctor testified. Her actions during that time were not reflective of her true character or desires. With proper treatment, she's made a remarkable recovery. Daniel's lawyers painted a different picture: abandonment in December cold, a week of silence while the father searched desperately, a calculated return timed for maximum damage. Mr. Cross visited the NICU every single day from the moment he learned of his son's existence, his lawyer argued. He was present when Miss Shaw was absent. He fought to bring his child home when she walked away. Back and forth, witnesses, testimonies, character references that ranged from glowing to damning depending on which side called them. Through it all, Noelle held James and prayed. Then Eleanor Cross asked to address the court.
"Your Honor, I'm 82 years old," she said, rising from her seat in the gallery. "I've buried a husband, a grandson's wife, and more friends than I care to count. I've watched my family accumulate wealth and lose its soul. And I've watched my grandson destroy himself with grief for 3 years." She walked slowly to the front of the courtroom, every eye following her. "I watched Daniel become a ghost after Grace died. He went to work. He attended the required functions, but there was nothing behind his eyes. The boy I raised, the man I loved, he was gone. Just a shell going through the motions." Her voice strengthened as she continued. "And then a baby appeared on a stranger's doorstep, and that stranger opened her door. I've watched my grandson come back to life these past 3 weeks, not because of money or lawyers or anything our family usually relies on, because he finally had something worth fighting for." She turned to look at Victoria.
I don't know what's in your heart, young lady. Maybe you do want to be a mother. Maybe the illness was real and the suffering was genuine. But I know what I've seen. Her voice hardened. I've seen you leave your son in the cold on Christmas Eve. I've seen a week of silence while my grandson drove himself half mad searching. And I've seen a very well-timed return with lawyers already retained. Eleanor's gaze shifted to Noelle, softening. That woman in the gallery, the one holding my great-grandson, she opened her door at midnight to strangers. She risked her career and her peace of mind to help a man she'd never met be with his son. She taught my grandson how to change diapers and make formula and sing lullabies. She brought him back to life. She turned back to the judge. That's the family James deserves. One built on love and sacrifice, not one built on calculation and convenient timing. The courtroom was silent. Judge Chen nodded slowly. Thank you, Mrs. Cross. Does anyone else wish to address the court?
The judge called a recess. In the hallway, Victoria approached Daniel. The perfect composure she'd maintained throughout the hearing had finally cracked. Mascara streaked her cheeks like dark rivers, and she looked, for the first time since Noelle had met her, like a real person instead of a polished performance. I didn't want it to be like this. Her voice was smaller than before, uncertain. Daniel stood very still. Then why, Victoria? Why any of this? Because I'm alone. The words came out raw, unvarnished by practice or pretense. I thought
I thought if I had your baby, if I was connected to you, I'd finally belong somewhere. Finally matter to someone. You could have talked to me 3 days ago when you showed up at my office.
And said what? That I was terrified? That I'd spent 8 months alternating between wanting to keep him and wanting to run? That the moment I held him, I loved him so much it hurt, but I also knew I had no idea how to be a mother? She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing her makeup further. When you wanted the baby but not me, when you made it so clear that all you cared about was him, something broke. I thought if I couldn't have your love, I could at least have your attention, your fear, your respect. By abandoning our son? I didn't plan it, her voice cracked. I was driving to your house, and I passed that neighborhood, and I saw that woman coming home from work, and something in me just stopped. I thought, she looks kind. She looks like she'd take care of him, better than I could.
Victoria, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking you to understand. I'm not a monster. I'm just a scared woman who made terrible choices because she didn't know how to ask for help. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. In the distance, Noelle watched through the window of the courtroom door, James heavy and warm in her arms. What if you didn't have to fight? Daniel said finally.
Victoria looked up, confused. What? Joint custody. Real joint custody. Not a weapon, not a negotiating tactic. Holidays, birthdays, school plays, and soccer games. The chance to actually be his mother, not just a visitor in his life. You'd do that? After everything I've put you through? After the threats, the lawyers, the media? I'd do anything for my son. Daniel paused. Even forgive the woman who almost destroyed us. But it has to be real, Victoria. No more games, no more leverage. Just two people trying to be good parents to a child who deserves better than either of us have given him so far. Victoria stared at him. Something shifted in her expression. The hard edges softening, the defensive walls crumbling. I like that, she whispered. I'd really like that. The judge granted Daniel primary custody. Victoria received generous visitation, supervised at first, then expanding as she demonstrated stability. Not a loss. A second chance.
Outside the courthouse, Noelle was waiting on the steps. James was in her arms, blinking at the winter sun. She looked exhausted and hopeful and beautiful. It's over, Daniel said. Is it? He sat beside her, reached into his pocket. This is a key to a house on Sullivan's Island. My grandmother's been trying to give it to me for years. Daniel, I'm not asking you to marry me. Not yet. He smiled. I'm asking you to take a chance. On me. On us. On whatever we're becoming. We've known each other 3 weeks. The best 3 weeks of my life. He took her hand. Come see the house. Stay for a weekend. See if this could work. She looked at the key. At James. At the man who'd walked into her life on Christmas Eve and turned everything upside down. One condition.
Anything. My mother. There's a memory care facility on the island. I'll call them today. She laughed, a real laugh, surprised out of her. Okay, let's see what happens. The Christmas tree in the Sullivan's Island house touched the ceiling. Eleanor had insisted, said a baby's first real Christmas deserved a tree that made you crane your neck to see the star on top. She'd supervised the decorating from her favorite armchair, directing the placement of every ornament like a general commanding troops. James, 13 months old now, was more interested in the ornaments than the presents. He'd figured out crawling 3 months ago and had been causing chaos ever since. Right now he was determined to reach a particularly shiny red ball on a low branch, and no amount of redirection could convince him otherwise.
"He has your stubbornness," Noelle said to Daniel, rescuing the ornament for the 3rd time. "And your inability to admit defeat," he countered, scooping up his son before he could make another attempt. Noelle's mother sat by the window, watching the ocean. Today was a good day, the kind that had become more frequent since the move to the island. She'd recognized Noelle immediately when she arrived, had pulled her into a hug that smelled like lavender and memory. "That's your young man," she'd said, pointing at Daniel. "The one you told me about, the one with the sad eyes." "His eyes aren't sad anymore, Mama." No, they're not." Her mother had smiled, clear and present in a way that made Noelle's heart ache with gratitude. "You did that. You brought him back to life." Victoria would arrive later with her new fiancé, a therapist she'd met during her recovery program, a quiet man who seemed to genuinely love her. They'd found a rhythm over the past year, the 4 of them co-parenting in ways none of them had expected. Joint holidays, shared milestones, the kind of blended family that shouldn't work on paper, but somehow did in practice. It wasn't perfect. There were still tense moments, still disagreements about schedules and boundaries, but they'd learned to talk through them, for James's sake, and slowly, painfully, something like forgiveness had started to grow. "Merry Christmas," Daniel said, wrapping his arms around Noelle from behind as she stood at the window. "Merry Christmas," she leaned back into his warmth. "Your grandmother is spoiling him again. She's earned the right. She says that's what great-grandmothers are for. She says a lot of things, most of them true." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "I have something for you." "Daniel, we said no big presents."
This one's been waiting for the right moment. He turned her to face him, pulled out a small velvet box. She knew what it was before he opened it, had suspected for months, from the way he looked at her sometimes, from the conversations that drifted toward futures and forevers. "It was Grace's," he said quietly, "her engagement ring. My grandmother kept it after she died, told me she was saving it for the woman who brought me back to life." The ring was simple, a diamond on a gold band, elegant in its simplicity, the kind of ring that said forever without shouting. "I know it might seem strange," Daniel continued, "to give you something that belonged to someone else, but Grace, she would have loved you. She would have wanted this, wanted me to find happiness again. Daniel, marry me, Noelle. Not because of convenience, not because of circumstances, not because we've been through so much together, and it seems like the logical next step." He met her eyes. "Marry me because I love you, because you opened your door when you didn't have to, and you haven't stopped opening it since. Because every morning I wake up grateful that a baby appeared on your doorstep and led me to you." She looked at the ring, at the tree, at her mother by the window, and James in Eleanor's lap, and the ocean stretching toward the horizon. At the life she'd never expected to find. "Yes," she said, 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring on her finger, kissed her, long and deep and full of promise. From across the room, Eleanor started applauding. James clapped too, even though he had no idea what was happening. And Noelle's mother smiled at the window, clear-eyed and present, watching her daughter choose love. Somewhere in the space between one heartbeat and the next, a woman who'd stopped believing in happy endings discovered they were just beginnings in disguise. And somewhere else, maybe, a woman named Grace smiled too.